He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had much to drink. But you have saved the best till now. This, the first of his miracles, of his miraculous signs, Jesus performed in Cana of Galilee. He thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him. They ran out of wine. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I think I need a refill. Don't look at somebody else and say, I done ran out. I think I need a refill. Now, one of the movies which I will boldly and blatantly and unashamedly admit that I like is the sequel to Bad Boys. Don't act like y'all don't watch movies. Amen. Bad Boys 2. Anybody seen that movie, Bad Boys 2? Amen. It's a funny and amusing, somewhat comical, insightful movie, whether you like it or not. It's got in it Martin Lawrence, Will Smith, and Gabrielle Union. Brothers say amen. And at the end of the movie, there's a Cuban villain who's gotten angry with Will Smith's character and Martin Lawrence because they've caught his racketeering of the drug called ecstasy. Young folk, y'all know a little something about ecstasy. Oh, it's quiet in here, but y'all know what I'm talking about. And they've retrieved his money. They got $10 million in cash that he believes belongs to him. And Martin Lawrence's sister, the character played by Gabrielle Union, has been snatched and kidnapped by this Cuban guy. And so the government comes to say to Martin Lawrence's character that they're sorry they don't do negotiations with Cuba. And so there's nothing they can do. So if you saw the movie, you know the story. They decided to go over there to Cuba and to rescue Sid. And they get over there and they set their plan in place. They got their bombs in place. They got their people in place. And then out of nowhere, the plan goes awry. Something doesn't go right in the plan, and now they're under attack, they're under assault, they're under harassment unexpectedly, and all of a sudden, Will Smith yells out, "Abort Plan A." Y'all remember that? Abort Plan A. He says, go to Plan B. Go to Plan B. And Martin Lawrence looks at him and says, what's Plan B? And they go to another scene, and another soldier says, Plan B? What's Plan B? And they look at Will Smith and ask proverbially and urgently, what is Plan B? And he says, I don't know, but Plan A ain't working. Let's do something. While we may laugh at the humor of that, there's a harsh reality and a ruthless principle interwoven within the fabric of the director's writing. And that is, every now and then we make great plans where Plan A is laid out to get whatever we want. But every now and then we come under unexpected, we come under astonishing and sudden assault from areas where we were not looking for it, and we end up running for our lives. Because even though we run looking for a Plan B, we don't really have a Plan B. Because we never expected for Plan A to fail and not to work. Well, who am I talking to and preaching to already? One poet put it this way: the best laid plans of mice and men sometimes go awry. How many of you know that you laid out some plans in your life? You had some things written down. You knew what you wanted to do, where you wanted to be, who you wanted to be with, who you didn't want to be with, what you wanted to have in the bank, what you wanted to do with school and in your career, where you wanted to get a job, the business you wanted to open. You had your plans laid out. It looked like everything was going the way it was supposed to go, and out of nowhere, Plan A gets blown up and blown away. And now you're walking around crazy and going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs because you don't have a plan B. Who am I preaching to today? You laid out some plans last year for 2009 and they never came to fruition. You laid out some plans in January and you wanted and intended and purposed that by December of this year, and December is fast approaching, and you still are where you were in January, because the best laid plans of mice and men have a tendency, they have a proclivity, they have a bent, they have a predisposition to go awry. Mr. Murphy put it like this: whatever can go wrong will go wrong. Every now and then, in spite of the plans that we make, things blow up in our face and unexpectedly go the way we did not anticipate them to go. And that is exactly and precisely what happens in this very familiar, proverbial, true, and well-known story. You know the story is known affectionately and commonly as the wedding at Cana. It's a well-known story how Jesus the Christ fixed what went wrong in the story. But the other day, as I was reading and doing my exegetical work for this sermonic presentation and biblical exposition, I discovered a fact of sociology and geography that added for me a poignant point of theology that I think will help us understand the sermon today. It was said that Galilee was essentially divided into two parts. And these two parts represented two different socio-economic pictures. One side of town was down by the Sea of Galilee. And those who lived down by the sea were said to be people of little and meager means. They were said to be poor people. They were seen as the people who did not have much, as people who had to hustle just to make a living. They were the people who could not make ends meet without a struggle. They were always in need. They were always dependent. They were hopelessly handcuffed by helplessness and by handouts. But then there was another area in Galilee called Cana. Everyone say Cana. Cana was known as the well-to-do section of Galilee. If you lived in Cana, then you were thought to be well off. If you lived in Cana, then you were thought to be, a politician on a mission. A big baller shot caller, number one stunner if you lived in Cana. If you lived in Cana, you were thought to have everything that it would take to be what you wanted to be and to have what you wanted to have and to go where you wanted to go and do what you wanted to do. If you lived in Cana, then you had your life together. You didn't have a care in the world. You didn't have to depend on anybody because everything that you needed, you already had in your pocket and in your bank account. If you lived in Cana, all of your ducks were in a row and were paid for. If you lived there, you had more money and to spare to buy what you needed and a little bit of what you wanted. And the Bible declares and proclaims and concludes that it was in Cana, watch this, where the wine ran out. I think y'all just missed that. I did all of that and you missed it. Because you must understand that if the wedding happened down by the other side of the tracks, then you would not be surprised that the wine ran out. Because maybe they only had bought as much wine as the little money that they had would allow. You would expect this kind of crisis on the other side of Galilee. But you would not expect it to be in Cana, where you've got more than enough. You wouldn't expect for your wine to run out. Well, let me ask you a question. What do you do when you run out in areas where you don't expect to run out? How do you handle it when you run out in places that you expect to have always what's needed to keep things filled and full? How do you handle it when plan A goes unexpectedly astray and awry? What do you do in areas where you thought you had it together and all of a sudden it begins to fall apart? Do I have one witness in here who can testify that every now and then some things in my life fell apart.